Hi everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we're back again to talk about a Star Trek book. And a particularly fun Star Trek book, which I finished up mere moments ago. Literally, moments ago, I finished it, and I put it down and said, you know what? I've got to sit down and talk about that. So, well, anyway, let's cover the basics. We have Star Trek Strange New Worlds, The High Country, written by New York Times best-selling author John Jackson Miller. And John Jackson Miller has written some other Trek books. Most recently, he wrote, and then I read Rogue Elements, which was the Star Trek Picard book, which covered Captain Rios, and that book was a lot of fun. So I was looking forward to getting into this, and am happy that I did. So, first off, let's just have a look at the book itself. This is the book. It's a large, hardcover book with a book jacket, which I know you're supposed to keep the book jacket on to keep your book safe while you're reading it and whatever, but I took the thing off to keep the book jacket safe, and then I completely made a mess of my book. I don't know if you can see that, but it's like bacon grease on it, and it's like water damage, all sorts of problems happen. But over the course of the last, maybe about 10 days, I would say, I have been reading this book and having a great time with it. Now let's see. The information from the back cover here, or the blurb. Across the lawless frontier. The shuttle slammed into the atmosphere, requiring Pike to shout into Uhura's communicator, Hemmer, we're in a place where basic physical laws can't be trusted. We're powerless and random things are failing on the Enterprise. And you say the transporter is the right choice? It's the only one, the chief engineer said from the starship. If there's a problem, I can trick the system into reintegrating you on the planet's surface, rather than where you are now. An appropriate analogy would be sending a letter with a false return address. I was going to say something I don't have the time to come up with. Spock sounded grave. The lieutenant's plan would deposit us on a world we know nothing about, where we could neither call for help nor receive it. We're going in hard and hot, Chin Riley said, struggling with the controls. This might be as good as it gets. Skipping rocks isn't much fun for the rocks, Pike thought. Do it, Hemmer, and no matter what happens, get Enterprise out of here until you know what's going on. He stared at the world rushing toward them. You have our full confidence. Of course I do, Hemmer said. All the same, if you'd all like to get into your environmental suits, I would not take offense. So, this book, let's see, here's the actual summary for this. When an experimental shuttlecraft fails, Captain Christopher Pike suspects a mechanical malfunction, only to discover the very principles on which Starfleet bases its technology have simply stopped functioning. He and his crewmates are forced to abandon ship in a dangerous maneuver that scatters their party across the strangest new world they've ever encountered. First Officer Una Chin Riley finds herself fighting to survive an untamed wilderness where dangers lurk at every turn. Young cadet Nyota Uhura struggles in a volcanic wasteland where things are not as they seem. Science Officer Spock is missing altogether, and Pike gets a chance to fulfill a childhood dream, to live the life of a cowboy in a world where the tools of the 23rd century are of no use. Yet, even in the saddle, Pike is still very much a starship captain, with all the responsibilities it entails. Setting out to find his crewmates, he encounters a surprising face from his past, and discovers that one people's utopia might be someone else's purgatory. He must lead an exodus, or risk a calamity of galactic proportions that even the Starship Enterprise is powerless to stop. Indeed. Again, it seems that gives away way too much about the story. I'm glad that I didn't read that before I got into it, because kind of the crew meeting up together and finding out what happens is kind of part of the fun of the whole thing. I did attempt to take some notes, and, oh boy, they worked out somewhat okay. So I've got like the main characters here, and I've got kind of the main plot points, and I did just finish it. But again, I've been reading it over the course of 10 days, and typically I will read it at night when kind of things have settled down. So if I forget a few things or we skip over a couple points, then, sorry, but that's what happens. But before we dive in, let's give like the non-spoilery thoughts and review here. Basically, this is a Star Trek book, but you're not getting the tech part. You know, there's no technology at all involved. So it's more of a what would the crew of the Enterprise do, you know, back in the Old West, which is a classic Trek scenario anyway. So if you're looking for something like that, something with like space and a lot of tech and that kind of stuff, that's not what you're going to get here. But this author, I think, writes the characters very well. Seems to kind of know them, like just even based on not many episodes, is able to, I think, do a very good job with Pike, Uhura, and just does I think, a really interesting. I'm not even sure how to put it. Just the way the book is written is with these very short kind of chapters, and it kind of jumps around and jumps around to what the different characters are doing. And it almost kind of reminded me of reading like something from like a pulp western, or like a Edgar Rice Burroughs, John Carter of Mars kind of thing, where you have these short little chapters that kind of jump around. And then you have an interesting thing he does is where, to move the story forward, you'll end a chapter kind of knowing that, you know, this is the plan going forward, and then the next chapter, when this new character kind of joins in and sees it, the plan is already in motion and in effect. So I like how that's done. It kind of keeps everything moving along, and even though you got these like short little chapters, everything kind of just fits together really well. And it starts out like a little slow, and then as more and more and more is revealed, it definitely picks up and leads to a very interesting and a very kind of classic Star Trek conclusion. So, but let's jump right into the actual just ranting and ranting and ranting here for a bit. So, the book starts out where they're basically on search. They're on a search. They're searching for the braidwood, which went missing, I think something about like a year ago in this area. So you have Pike, Una, Uhura, and Spock in a shuttlecraft approaching the planet. As they get closer and closer, all the systems on the shuttlecraft malfunction, and everything basically goes haywire, and they are drawn into the gravity of the planet. They have one chance to escape the gravity, or to escape the shuttlecraft, which is Hemmer's crazy kind of transporter plan. He's not sure if it's going to work, but it's the best thing they have to do. So they all put on their EV suits, and they are transported. He enacts this emergency transport, and they are all basically, he doesn't know if they'll get back to the ship or to the planet. And they are all deposited on the planet, which is designated FGC 7781. And but they all end up in different spots. So it gives you basically, like, initially they give you kind of a first, every person kind of gets their own little chapter about where they're at and what happened. Pike lands in like a tar pit. Una materializes like upside down in a tree with half of her pack stuck in the tree. Uhura materializes in like a volcanic wasteland and is like melting into the lava and has to escape from that. And then Spock, he materializes sinking in some water, and then as soon as he comes up out of the water, gets knocked unconscious, and then he's basically out of like the whole first half of the story then. The main first half will focus on Captain Pike and what he is going through, and then just kind of like a little bit here and there of Una and Uhura. So that's kind of like the first half. Now with Captain Pike, he wakes up and is rescued by the Maggies, who are like farmers living in this old west town, which has been preserved here. So now, if you've never seen the Enterprise episode North Star, you would want to watch it before seeing or reading this book. This is basically based on what the people in that story did, which was to transplant populations from places they thought were being destroyed and then take them to a new place. And that's what they've done on this planet of Fresca. So they have this population, which was going to be destroyed in like the 1800s. They brought them to this planet where nothing electronic can work, and they basically live like that life as they used to live. So Captain Pike has been rescued by the Maggies, and they know that he's a little bit more than kind of what he's trying to let on. He's trying to still, not mess with like First Contact or break the Prime Directive or anything like that. But they are aware that he's possibly from space, basically. He helps them put out a fire, in which he notices that the fire on this planet is not quite like regular fire, and it kind of moves of its own accord, and it destroys one of Joe Maggie's machines that he was working on building, which is something that's basically forbidden around here. And that's when you get to meet up with these wardens, and they're kind of like the officers in charge to make sure that everybody's sticking to the rules of a fresca. And I hope it's supposed to be called a fresca. That's what I called it in my head the whole time. It's probably not right, but once you start saying something like that, that's just how it goes. So on a fresca, you can't use technology, and if you do use it, the wardens will basically call, and then you get the fire sent down, your technology gets wrecked, and then they take you away to kind of give you a stern talking to. There's not like a lot of real punishment on this planet or anything like that. So they take Joe Maggie away to the church to give him a stern talking to. And this is when they take Pike to the church as well, or he gets to go to the church and join in the Jubilee celebration, where he finds out a little bit more about what's going on here. So at the Jubilee in this big church, they are all supposed to grab onto these rongers, which are described as kind of like a pole coming up with like two curved ends coming out. So you grab onto this thing, and as soon as he does it, he's like transported into this kind of psychic plane with all the other residents of the planet. And then you meet the general, the leader of the planet, this General Draco, who gives the whole story about how the Skagarans would come and transplant people from doomed civilizations and bring them to this planet to save them. And that's what the Jubilee is about. And he's telling all the different stories about how he saved these people and he saved this people. And there's more than just humans here. There's humans, there's these Strews, there's... See, this is where my notes will fail me. Uganans. The Strews are important, though, so I'm glad I remembered that. But, yeah, and here at the... So the story of the Jubilee is told, and that's kind of the history of a fresca, and everybody's happy, happy, happy. As Pike is leaving, he sees a face that he recognizes. An old friend, Lila, who was a rancher on Earth, a Skagaran, is there and is serving as one of the wardens of a fresca. So they kind of meet up and talk, and Pike and her riding horses and having a good time and kind of catching up on old times, and he's trying to just continually get more information and about how he can contact his crew, how he can get out, and she's just kind of like closing the book on it and trying to be like, well, no, you're done here. That's the end of it. That's that. So you have to stay on this planet now. Nobody ever gets off. So, and then another thing about this book that I did like is it is told, like I said, it's told with the short chapters, but it is also told in parts, and they do include like old-timey maps in there. So there you can see there's the Maggie farm where Pike crash landed there, and then let's see if we can find. So the point that we're in the story right now is right here, about at chapter 2. So here you can see we have a new map, and this is kind of what reminded me too of like it being kind of an old pulp book, something like that, you know. So here's the new map showing this location there of Mataya. So we know what Pike's doing now. We'll jump over to what Una's doing during this time. And she materialized in the middle of a forest, and she's fighting her way through this wilderness where she meets up with this kind of like jungle, kind of Tarzan kind of guy named Cenarius or Celarius. Cenarius. his name is Cenarius. Celarius. Probably Celarius. I think Cenarius is the character from Hearthstone. Well, anyway, just finished reading this book and I can't tell you the character's name. Celarius is like a mountain man. He's out. His job is to preserve the environment there and make sure that no one colony is encroaching upon it too much or messing things up. So he's out there with her, finds her, rescues her from some of the local wildlife, and then gets her a ride on his airship back to Mataya, which is like the... here, let's get a close look at Mataya. It's Mataya. It's like the headquarters of the people that run this planet. The wardens and the people in charge, that the Skagarans that kind of keep everything going here. So when they get there, you learn that Cenarius is a Solarius. I see it right there. Anyway, you find out that he is actually... I got a focus thing going on. He's actually the son of Draco. He's like the next in line to take over as the leader of this planet here. So, that's what's going on with Una. Now, they give you a little bit more about what's going on with Uhura as well. She wakes up in the volcanic area and is surprised to find that some of the flames around her are kind of sentient. Or at least one is speaking with her, or not speaking with her, but kind of reacting to her. So she names this new friend Empy and dubs it an empatherm, and is witness to a whole bunch of these empatherms being like sucked up by an airship and a crew with these Rangers, you know. So they're sucking up and they're using all these things for something, and she sees that and she saves Empy. And so Empy becomes her friend as she journeys out of this volcanic wilderness to try to get to a place of safety. So that's kind of her journey, is just marching onward and onward and onward and trying to get out of this wilderness completely. So, alright, so they go back now to the to Christopher Pike and what's going on with him. And he is back in like the old western town, and excuse me, back in the old western town, and this is where we meet some other interesting characters who kidnap him with a weird net gun, basically. And these are the Menders, and they basically say, we know you're from outer space, we don't like this planet, we want you to help us get out of here. They are like a crew, or a group of inventors, and they can't stand the rules here. They don't like being told what to do, and they want to be able to create and to do these things. So they're asking for help from Pike. So, alright, so now we're going to just kind of go off the rails here a little bit as we get closer to... so we're getting closer to maybe about the middle of the story here now, where it starts to get really... It starts to kind of turn into a chase story, really. So, Pike's friend Lila doesn't like what's going on, and basically she is in contact with General Draco and wants to turn the Menders in. You know, she's on the trail of the Menders, so they have to escape. They know that Draco's going to be coming for them. The Wardens are going to be coming for them. They don't want to give up what they're doing. They've already set the fire, the empatherms, after them and destroyed like some of their laboratories and some of their things. So they go on the run. And it's at this point in the story that they're able to establish a kind of a... Well, right before they go on the run, Pike uses basically arranging a bunch of stuff to establish a rudimentary communication with Enterprise. And then Enterprise is able to send down via like just a very small capsule, perfectly placed. They shoot it down. They communicate that way. So they send down some communications, and they're able to set up through like a series of... It's like flashes with like an iridium thing. So like he can like do like Morse code basically to communicate. And they do that to kind of set up, and he basically says, don't come closer, don't send anyone in, and explains what's going on. And they're basically just trying to kind of find out like more about what's going on. So they get, let's see, yeah, see my notes fail me here. Well, basically what they do find out is that this effect, this baffle effect, is not limited to this planet, or could possibly not be limited to the planet, and it could be amplified, and it could be infinitely amplified, and that's when the real kind of danger of the book is shown. So if this is something that happens, obviously like any starship that was flying would be, anyone on board would die, but also it would destroy like the magnetospheres of planets. So even full planets would be wrecked and destroyed if this system were unleashed. So now, now we finally get to meet up with Spock and find out what he's been doing this whole time. And it turns out he was rescued by a group of kind of friendly fish people who turned him over to another group on the planet, a group of crashed Vulcans who crashed like 100 years ago and have taken over basically a bunch of Chinese junks, like sailing ships, and they sail them around performing good deeds on this planet, and are kind of like a legend on the planet, basically. But the keepers there, the Skagarans and General Draco, are always wanting to find them and search for them, but are never able to. So Spock is with them now, and they come to the rescue right at the kind of the final moment when Pike is about to get captured by, or Pike and the Menders and them, or is about to get captured by the Wardens and brought back for a stern talking to, or whatever they're going to do. So Pike is able to escape on the ships, and then they're able to kind of deduce what their main plan is, which is they need to figure out a way to shut the whole thing off so they can get off the planet and then just stop that from happening. So they find that there's this central node that they need to go to, which is up north, of course, in the ice. So they have to find a way to get up there. So on the Enterprise, they have like a few scenes here and there, and this is where they kind of showcase Hemmer a little bit, and Hemmer has some sort of mysterious plan that he wants to enact, and I think it's Lon who's in charge on the Enterprise, so Lon and him kind of go back and forth on it, and they don't mention what it is yet, but they say okay, they're going to go ahead with it. So as they're getting like closer, they get another blast from the Enterprise, and it's all these so as they get closer to the frozen north, they approach like another settlement of these Eugenans, and they're like these very large people, and they are also people that use technology as well. They use it in secret, so they don't want this to happen as well. So they're friendly to them. So they approach these Eugenans, and it's at this point when the Enterprise starts sending down large pieces of metal, and they're actually kind of like stripping decking and things and sending it down. And then in the very last pod that comes down, Hemmer comes out dizzy from the ride, and explains the plan, that they need to build a conveyance so that they can get to the place fast enough. Now the bad guys know about the place, so they're trying to get there too. And turns out that Pike's friend Lila is like one of the worst bad guys of all in this, because she wants to get to this thing, and she wants to activate it, because she lost her family to the Klingons, and now she wants revenge. So that's kind of like the driving motive for her. And I don't know, maybe that's the part of the book that I wasn't sure about, but in the end, I think it's revealed that like she lost not only her family and her colony, but like she had like 3 kids there as well, and that's what kind of drove her to like the madness of actually wanting to turn on this device that would turn off all electricity everywhere, basically. So now the book becomes this kind of race to get to the top, and you get to find out what Hemmer wanted to build, which was the world's largest like snowmobile, basically. So Hemmer is an Anar. He's like from an ice world, so he's built this gigantic ice sled that has treads that are driven by. So this book kind of gets crazy, right, at this point. So they got this thing and they're driving it across the ice. It's got treads that are driven by horses, and then they lift the treads up and they just go sliding across the ice. And then they're battling against these airships that are coming in. And this reminded me, like I said, a lot of reading like a John Carter book. There's just so much of this kind of really wacky technology stuff like this that was happening. But anyway, it's a race to the dish to see who can get there first. And then also, Lila is racing on horseback across country to get there as well, to do what she wants to do. So they make it there, and they're able to get to the central Ranger, and they're able to get. Well, they all kind of get there at the same time, basically. Draco orders them all, or orders Lila to, stop them. Lila grabs the thing, and they activate the system. So the system turns out to be like really weird, because when they activate it, all the people, or like all of the Rangers on the planet fly into space, enclosed in like bubbles. And then in one of these bubbles, you've got like Una and I think Spock and Uhura. Yeah, they're like in one of the bubbles, flying up, holding on to the things, because they're like part of activating the system in their way to like shut it off. And this is turning into an insane rant, but that's fine. I've missed out on a lot of the story, but I'm covering the high points of it, I'm sure. So anyway, they are attempted shutting off. Lila wants to turn it on, and that's what she's done. So that's why the bubbles are all expanding, and that's like the effect is expanding further and further out into space. So then you have like the climactic moment of the book is when they have Pike talk her down from the edge, basically. And he's successful in doing that, and she stops the effect from happening, which is when MP the Empatherm is able to kind of take form and communicate with Uhura more clearly about what they need to do and who they are. And it turns out that they were extra-dimensional beings, and they had a problem in their dimension, so they created this system of Rangers to drain off all this extra energy from their dimension. But they didn't want for all this to happen, so now they want it to be shut off and shut down. So they tell Uhura that she needs to beam away and destroy the central Ranger, and that will destroy all of them. So she communicates with the Enterprise. They're able to do that. They destroy the Ranger. All the Rangers are destroyed. The baffle is gone, and they're able to save the day and save the universe. So that's the end. That's what happens, and it was fun. It was a fun ride to get there. It was it's like a classic Trek ending, where you get like, and you don't get a big action scene at the end. You just get somebody talking to somebody and talking to them about what's the right thing to do here, But they do wrap it up. They give you like a little bit of closing, like what happens to the Vulcans, where do they end up, what do they end up doing, what happens to Lila. So, it kind of closes the book on everybody there. And then the book itself is taking place in between, let me tell you, so you know exactly where it is. Between two episodes here. Serene Squall is the one right before, and right after this is the Elysian Kingdom, which is the one, if you remember, that kind of covers Dr. Mabenga and his daughter and what's going on there. So a lot of that kind of plays into this book a little bit too. So it was good. I had a good time with it, and look forward to hopefully reading more Strange New Worlds novels. And I'm sure that they are going to continue to put out more. The new season of the show comes out in just a couple of weeks here. 6 weeks or something. June 15th, I think. So we'll be looking forward to that for sure, and trying to catch up on what we're missing in the meantime. So, all right, as we approach the 30-minute mark, we are going to call this one quits. So thank you all so much for tuning in with me here for my rant about The High Country, the Strange New Worlds novel, which I've enjoyed for the past 10 days or so. And tune in next time when we'll talk about some other fun Trek thing. So, as always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Live long and prosper. And we'll see you all in the next one. Bye.